Lauren didn't ask me to the party. She conscripted me. It was a rooftop affair in one of those downtown buildings that had been gutted and reborn as a temple to exposed brick and overpriced cocktails. The kind of gathering I'd come to call a standing room only performance, where the price of admission was a convincing portrayal of someone having a spectacular time. Chairs were anathema, a sign of social surrender. You were meant to mill, to circulate, to be seen in the act of being social. My personal hell, in other words. But Lauren, my wife, was a creature of these environments. She didn't just swim in these social currents. She was the tide. "It'll be fun," she'd said, the phrase a well-worn piece of marital code that translated to, "You will come, you will stand in a corner nursing a single drink for 3 hours, and you will provide me with a plausible exit strategy when I've exhausted my social battery." So there I was, a glass of whiskey sweating in my hand, my back pressed against a cool metal railing, conducting a silent survey of the city lights and pretending they were more interesting than the cacophony of performative laughter around me. I knew most of the faces, not as friends, but as recurring characters in the long-running play of Lauren's social life. They were a curated collection of her colleagues, a few holdovers from college, and a rotating cast of plus-ones who, if they demonstrated sufficient charisma, might eventually be upgraded to series regulars. Matt was the newest cast member. He'd materialized a few months ago, a man seemingly without an origin story. One week he wasn't there, the next he was a permanent fixture, positioned at the epicenter of every conversational cluster. He was a human Labrador retriever, all boundless enthusiasm, easy charm, and an almost desperate need to be liked. He basked in the attention that I actively avoided, the kind of validation that Lauren seemed to subsist on. And she was, as always, magnificent in her element. She moved through the crowd not like a person, but like a concept. She was the embodiment of effervescence, her laughter engineered to rise just above the thrum of the ambient house music, her hair catching the glow of the Edison bulbs as if on cue. Lauren had long ago mastered the art of being looked at. The megawatt smile, the sparkling eyes, the casual touch on an arm that created an instant, fleeting intimacy. She was the star of the show for everyone. Except, it seemed, for me. While she collected anecdotes and dispensed charm, I remained at my post, the silent watchman at the edge of her glittering kingdom. The distance between us wasn't just physical, it had become a vast, unbridgeable expanse. It was in the way her eyes scanned the room, even while I was talking to her, searching for the next, more interesting interaction. It was in the way her laughter with others sounded genuine, while with me it had become a polite, hollow echo. Her phone, left on a small table near my railing, began to vibrate. Not a single buzz, but a frantic, insistent stutter. Once, twice, a third time. A relentless demand for her attention. Against my better judgment, my eyes were drawn to the screen as it lit up with a cascade of notifications. When she drifted back to my orbit to retrieve her wine glass, the question slipped out before I could stop it. "Who's texting you so much?" I kept my tone light, an exercise in casual curiosity I did not feel. She glanced at the phone, and a smile flickered across her lips, sly, secretive, a smile meant for someone else. She flipped the device face down on the table, a gesture of casual concealment that felt anything but. "Work," she said, her gaze already moving past me, scanning the crowd. "Work," I repeated, one eyebrow arching in spite of myself. "It's almost 11 on a Saturday." She finally looked at me, and her sigh was a masterpiece of condescension. It was a sound that managed to convey boredom, pity, and profound irritation all at once. Not everyone clocks out at 5, Liam. My gut twisted into a cold, hard knot. 100 follow-up questions screamed in my mind, but I swallowed them. This wasn't the place. A public confrontation was a violation of the unspoken rules of our marriage, the primary rule being, we do not air our dysfunction where Lauren's audience can see it. And then, it happened. The moment that would become the epicenter of the earthquake that was to come. Lauren, her wine glass held aloft, tapped her fork against its rim. The sharp, clear ring cut through the chatter, and like a flock of birds turning in unison, every head swiveled in her direction. She drank in the attention, her smile widening. I should have known. The spotlight never found Lauren by accident. She beckoned it. "A toast," she announced, her voice resonating with practiced confidence. To my husband, Liam. She turned her dazzling smile on me, and for a delusional half-second, I thought this might be a peace offering. A rare, public acknowledgement of us. I was a fool. The man who is as reliable, as dependable, and as consistently predictable as a Honda Civic. The laughter wasn't immediate. It started as a few scattered chuckles, then swelled into a wave as the full impact of the joke landed. It was a perfect Lauren joke, a compliment wrapped around an insult, delivered with a smile, so bright you barely felt the blade slip between your ribs. My face flushed with a hot mixture of shame and fury. She wasn't finished. She let the laughter crest, then raised a hand for silence. No, really, she continued, her smile unwavering. He's not the most exciting model on the lot, but hey, he'll get you where you need to go. Every single time. The laughter was louder now, more confident. I felt the weight of dozens of eyes on me, some amused, some pitying. Each glance was a pinprick, dissecting me, confirming her assessment. I gripped my whiskey glass, my knuckles white, my jaw a block of granite. Lauren, playing to her audience, pressed on. And let's not forget his truly unique talent for steering any lighthearted conversation toward the fascinating world of tax deductions. A man of many, many spreadsheets. That's when I knew. This wasn't a roast. It wasn't a joke. It was a public execution. A calculated act of humiliation designed to elevate her by diminishing me, to paint me as the stable, boring anchor to her magnificent, soaring kite. And who was laughing the loudest, slapping the table with tears in his eyes? Matt. He caught my eye, still chuckling, and leaned over. Man, she's got you pegged. Huh? He said, clapping me on the shoulder. Gotta love her sense of humor. Sense of humor. If this was humor, I'd forgotten how to laugh. I leaned toward Lauren, my voice a low, dangerous whisper that only she could hear. What the hell was that? It was a joke, Liam, she said, swirling her wine, the picture of nonchalance. Relax. Publicly emasculating me is your idea of a joke? Her eyes snapped to mine, the smile vanishing, replaced by a flash of irritation. God, you are so sensitive, she hissed, her voice dropping. It's not that deep. But it was. Standing there, bathed in the glow of the string lights and the residue of my own humiliation, I knew it was that deep. It was a chasm, and she had just pushed me in, all while smiling for the crowd. I wish I could tell you I was the bigger man, that I shrugged off Lauren's performance with a wry smile, recognizing it for the desperate cry for attention it was. But her words were not stones that rolled off my back. They were shards of glass that worked their way under my skin. The phrase Honda Civic played on a relentless loop in my mind, each repetition accompanied by the soundtrack of Matt's braying laughter. This was different from her usual casual dismissals. This was a statement of purpose. The drive home was a study in silence. A thick, suffocating blanket of unspoken resentment filled the car. I gripped the steering wheel, my gaze fixed on the road, while Lauren was illuminated by the bluish glow of her phone, a small, smug smile playing on her lips as she scrolled. She didn't look like a woman who had just publicly filleted her husband. She looked like a woman who had just gotten away with something. When we pulled into our driveway, she was out of the car before I'd even shifted into park, the slam of her door a punctuation mark on the evening's hostility. I followed her inside, the jangle of my keys on the granite countertop sounding obscenely loud in the quiet house. She was at the fridge, pulling out a bottle of water, her back to me. I broke the ceasefire. You want to tell me what that was about back there? She took a long, slow sip of water before turning, leaning against the counter as if she couldn't possibly imagine what I was referring to. What was what about? The toast. The phone buzzing all night. Matt laughing like a hyena. The general theme of my public neutering. Take your pick. The eye roll was so exaggerated I'm surprised she didn't pull a muscle. Oh my God, Liam. It was a joke. You're being so incredibly dramatic. You called me a Honda Civic in front of everyone we know. Well, she said, the corner of her mouth twitching into that infuriating smirk. You are reliable. It wasn't just the toast. It was the architecture of her dishonesty, a structure I was only now beginning to see. The constant phone notifications, the sly smiles, the way she had made me feel like an inconvenience in my own life. It hadn't been right for a long time, and I had been too complacent, too trusting, too much of a Honda Civic to see it. When I walked into our bedroom, Her purse was on the bed, her phone half spilling from its unzipped mouth. The screen lit up again. Another message. I froze, staring at it. It felt like a venomous snake, coiled and waiting. A part of me, the part that still believed in the vows we'd taken, screamed at me to walk away. But another part, a colder, angrier part that had been born on that rooftop, took over. I'm not proud of what I did, but I don't regret it. I picked up the phone. Her passcode was our anniversary. The irony was a physical blow. The screen unlocked. My hands trembled as I opened her messages. I told myself I was just looking for reassurance. What I found was a demolition. The most recent message was from Matt. You were on fire tonight. Can't stop thinking about you in that dress. Asterisk. My stomach plummeted, a freefall into a dark, cold abyss. My thumb, seemingly with a will of its own, scrolled up. And there it was. Not just a flirtation. A novel. A sprawling epic of their secret life, written in texts and emojis, stretching back for months. Matt, last night was amazing. Still can't believe it. Asterisk. Lauren, me too. When's the next time you're working late? Winking face asterisk. My vision blurred. I had to brace myself against the dresser. Each message was a body blow. There were photos, tucked away in a hidden album. A digital archaeology of their affair. A selfie of them in a sun-drenched cafe from 2 weeks ago, the very day she'd told me she was trapped in all-day meetings. They were laughing, heads close together, a picture of carefree intimacy. The final, killing stroke was a video. I didn't press play. I couldn't. The thumbnail was enough. Her, leaning into him, her face alight with the kind of unrestrained joy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. It was a look of pure adoration. And it was for him. Like a man on autopilot, a detective at the scene of his own life's murder. I began to forward everything to my own phone. The texts, the photos, the video. Evidence. When I was done, I placed her phone back exactly where I'd found it and sat on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. The feeling wasn't just sadness, it was a hollowing out. A surgical removal of trust, love, and shared history, leaving behind nothing but a raw, echoing void. The bedroom door creaked open. Lauren stood there, her expression shifting from annoyance to sharp suspicion the moment she saw me. "What are you doing?" she asked, her eyes darting from my face to her purse. She knew. I didn't say a word. I just held up my own phone, the screen glowing with a picture of her and Matt. Care to explain this? Her face hardened, the soft lines of her beauty solidifying into a mask of defiance. "Were you going through my things? Are you seriously trying to turn this on me right now?" I snapped, the numbness giving way to a white-hot rage. I stood up, the phone feeling like a weapon in my hand. "How long, Lauren? How long has this been going on?" She crossed her arms, the smirk returning like a shield. "Does it matter?" Something inside me fractured. Asterisk, does it matter? Asterisk. I repeated, my voice rising, shaking. "You've been sneaking around with him, humiliating me, lying to my face, and you have the nerve to ask me if it matters?" She took a step closer, her voice dropping to an icy, venomous whisper. "Oh, please, Liam. Maybe if you weren't so relentlessly boring, I wouldn't have needed someone else to remind me what it feels like to have fun." That was it. The final demolition charge. I didn't explode. I imploded. I walked past her, my movements stiff and robotic, grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the closet, and headed for the living room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. The fight had gone out of me, replaced by a chilling, absolute certainty. I was done. The next morning, the silence in the house was a physical presence. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the dead air of a crime scene. I lay on the couch, the damning evidence from Lauren's phone burned onto the backs of my eyelids. The life I thought I had was a fiction, a carefully constructed stage play, and I was the only one who hadn't known the script. Lauren emerged from the bedroom, a high priestess of indifference, clutching a coffee mug like a scepter. She gave me a cursory glance, her face a blank slate of practiced nonchalance. She was either hoping I'd let it go, or, worse, she simply didn't care. "We need to talk," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the previous night's fire. I had moved past rage into a desolate, arctic calm. She sighed, a theatrical exhalation of impatience. "About what?" "Don't play dumb, Lauren. It doesn't suit you," I said, sitting up. "About Matt. About the months of lies. About the fact that our marriage is a complete fraud." Her eyes narrowed. For a moment, I saw a flicker of something. Was it strategy? Calculation? Before she settled on a defiant shrug. Fine. What do you want to know? Her casualness was more insulting than any lie. I want to know, I said, standing to face her. How you could look me in the eye every day while you were building a whole other life behind my back. I want to know how you thought you could humiliate me and then act like I'm the one with the problem. The smirk. That goddamn smirk. You're being so dramatic, Liam. It's not like I planned for any of this to happen. Don't you dare. I snapped, my voice cracking despite my efforts to control it. Don't you dare try to frame this as some whimsical accident. You didn't trip and fall into Matt's bed for 6 months. This was a campaign. It was deliberate. She remained unervingly composed, tilting her head with an air of clinical curiosity, as if I were a particularly dull specimen under a microscope. You're blowing this way out of proportion. People have affairs, Liam. It happens. Grow up. The words were so stunning in their callousness that they momentarily stole my breath. Asterisk, people have affairs? Asterisk. I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief. That's your defense? That your betrayal is so common it's practically mundane. She shrugged again, the gesture a dismissal of me, of us, of everything. Look, I wasn't happy, okay, she said, as if this were a perfectly reasonable explanation. You were so busy being you. Reliable. Predictable. Boring. I needed something more. I needed to feel something. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this cold, cruel stranger with the woman I had married. So you want a Matt? That preening, self-absorbed parasite? He's your idea of something more? Her smirk wavered, the first crack in her armor. Matt makes me feel alive, she said, her voice regaining its defiant edge. Something you haven't done in years. The venom in her words was potent, designed to wound, to justify her actions by invalidating my very existence. A week ago, it would have shattered me. Now, it was just pathetic. Do you even hear yourself? I asked, my voice dropping to a near whisper. The sheer, unadulterated selfishness of what you're saying? You were bored, so you set our life on fire, and now you're blaming me for not being flammable enough. The eye roll returned. You're just mad because you got caught. You were perfectly happy in your perfect little bubble. That was it. The final nail. You know what, Lauren? You're a cliché, I said, my voice steady, the cold calm returning. You want to feel alive? Fine. Go live your thrilling, dramatic life with Matt. Go burn it all down. But don't you dare stand here and try to pin the arson on me. Her smirk vanished, replaced by a cold fury. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? She spat. Newsflash, Liam. You're not. You're just a mediocre man who confused comfort with love. I shook my head, taking a step back, creating a physical space that mirrored the emotional chasm between us. I'm not the one who threw away our marriage, Lauren. That was all you. I turned and walked away before she could respond. I didn't want to hear another excuse, another justification. I went back to the couch, the temporary throne of my new, fractured reality. That night, I called Ryan. I needed an anchor in the storm. Lauren's cheating, I said, the words tasting like ash. There was a pause, then a low whistle. Damn, man. You sure? I have a whole digital archive of their greatest hits, Ryan. It's Matt. Matt? He repeated, his voice laced with contempt. Of course it is. That guy's a walking Axe body spray commercial. What are you going to do? I don't know. I admitted, pinching the bridge of my nose. She's not even sorry. She's blaming me. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Listen to me, Liam. Don't do anything rash. Don't confront him. Don't get into a screaming match with her. She wants that. She wants drama. Don't give it to her. You need to be smart. Smart. Asterisk, the word felt foreign. For years, I had been reliable, dependable, a Honda Civic. It was time to learn how to be a surgeon. The day after my final, chillingly honest conversation with Lauren, I woke up with a singular, crystalline purpose. I was done reacting. For too long, I had been a passive character in the drama of my own life, buffeted by Lauren's moods, her manipulations, her betrayals. That ended now. The game board was still on the table, but I was no longer playing her game. I was starting my own. My first move was to call Megan. She was a divorce attorney I'd met years ago, a woman who operated with the calm, methodical precision of a bomb disposal expert. She didn't deal in emotion. She dealt in leverage. Liam, she said after I laid out the sordid details, her voice is steady, reassuring presence over the phone. I'm sorry you're in this position, but from a legal standpoint, this is a gift. First things first, documentation is your best friend. Bank statements, credit card bills, the texts and photos you mentioned. We need to build a comprehensive timeline of the infidelity and, more importantly, any marital assets she may have wasted on this extracurricular activity. The evidence I'd copied from Lauren's phone felt less like a source of pain and more like ammunition. I've got it all, I said. I can send it over today. Good, Megan replied. And Liam? One more thing. From this moment on, you are a black hole of information. You don't argue with her. You don't accuse her. You don't engage. Let her think you're sulking. The less she knows about what we're doing, the better. Adopting the persona of a black hole was easier than I thought. Lauren, oblivious, continued her performance as the aggrieved party, strutting around the house with an air of defiant superiority. She was so consumed by her own narrative, the story of the vibrant woman shackled to the boring man, that she failed to notice the shift in my demeanor. She mistook my strategic silence for defeated resignation. It was a fatal miscalculation. While she was living her drama, I was immersed in the quiet, meticulous work of dismantling it. I spent evenings poring over our financial records, my anger solidifying into a cold, hard resolve with every line item. There it was in black and white. Hundreds spent on lavish dinners for two that I wasn't invited to, a weekend getaway at a boutique hotel she'd claimed was a solo wellness retreat, charges from high-end stores for gifts that had never been mine. It wasn't just an affair, it was a shadow economy funded by our joint account. Megan worked with surgical efficiency, drafting divorce papers that were less a petition and more a detailed indictment. It chronicled Lauren's infidelity and outlined a clear case for financial misconduct, arguing for a division of assets that heavily favored me. Lauren's first inkling that the ground had shifted beneath her came a week later. She sauntered into the living room, phone in hand, a glint of malicious glee in her eyes. Matt says hi, she announced, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. He thinks you're taking this all a little too personally. This was a familiar move, a provocation designed to elicit a reaction, to draw me into a fight she knew how to win. The old Liam would have taken the bait. The new Liam simply turned a page in his book. Good for Matt, I said, not looking up. The silence that followed was heavy. She stood there, her weapon having failed to detonate. She blinked, confused, like a predator whose prey had suddenly refused to run. After a moment, she let out an exasperated huff and stormed out, muttering about my terminal boringness. It was a small, quiet victory, but it felt monumental. I had denied her the drama she craved, and in doing so, I had taken back a piece of my own power. The first mediation session was pure theater. We sat on opposite sides of a polished mahogany table, me and Megan, calm and prepared, Lauren and her lawyer, Bryce, a man whose suit was shinier than his arguments. Lauren had come dressed for the role of the tragic heroine, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. I gave up my life for him, she lamented, her voice trembling. I put my dreams on hold to support his career, to build our home. And this is how he repays me. Megan, unimpressed, didn't even flinch. Could you please specify which dreams you put on hold, Mrs. Hayes? Our records indicate you haven't held a job for longer than 6 months in the last 5 years. Lauren sputtered, caught off guard. Bryce cleared his throat. My client made significant non-financial contributions to the marriage. Ah, yes, the contributions, Megan said, opening a folder. Shall we discuss the wellness retreat in wine country with Mr. Thompson? Or perhaps the several $1,000s in jewelry purchased in the last 6 months? We have the receipts. The color drained from Lauren's face. Bryce shot her a panicked look. The performance had crumbled under the weight of cold, hard facts. Lauren had walked in expecting to control the narrative, to play the victim. She had walked into an ambush. It was a few days after that disastrous mediation that Matt decided to emerge from the wreckage. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, hey man, can we talk? It's Matt, asterisk. My first impulse was to block him, to erase his existence with the tap of a button. But a darker, more curious impulse won out. What could this man possibly have to say to me? Fine, I typed back. Be here in 30. He arrived looking like a man auditioning for a role he was painfully wrong for. The remorseful bad boy. He entered my house with a hesitant swagger, his hands raised in a gesture of mock surrender. "Liam," he began, his voice oozing a practiced sincerity. "Thanks for this. I know things are tense." "Tense is a word you use when the Wi-Fi is slow, Matt," I said, my voice flat. "You slept with my wife. We're well past tense." He winced, then launched into his prepared speech. "Look, I screwed up. But you have to understand, Lauren came to me. She told me how unhappy she was, how she felt trapped. I was just trying to be a friend. It just happened." I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "It just happened? For months? Did you also just happen to take her on weekend trips, charged to my credit card?" His smug facade began to crack. "She's a manipulator, man," he said, his voice dropping, trying to reposition himself as my ally. "She twists things. She makes you feel like you're the crazy one. She did it to me, too." The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it was almost impressive. He was trying to bond with me over the shared trauma of being manipulated by my wife, the woman he was sleeping with. "Let me get this straight," I said, stepping closer. "You're here, in my house, trying to sell me on the idea that you're a victim? You, the guy who was laughing his ass off while she publicly humiliated me." "I just wanted to apologize," he mumbled, his eyes darting toward the door. "You didn't come here to apologize," I said, the cold truth of it settling in. "You came here because Lauren is costing you more than you bargained for, and you're trying to do damage control. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry it blew up in your face." He had no answer for that. I walked over to the corner, picked up the old basketball that had been gathering dust, and without a word, I tossed it at him. It wasn't a violent throw, but it hit him squarely in the chest with a satisfying thump. He stumbled back, catching it out of sheer reflex, a look of utter bewilderment on his face. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice low and steady. He stared at me, then at the basketball in his hands, as if trying to process the absurdity of the situation. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Wisely, he turned and left without another word. As the door clicked shut behind him, I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt lighter. The clowns were finally exiting the circus. After the symbolic exorcism of Matt via basketball, I felt a decisive shift. The rot had been exposed. Now it was time for the amputation. My life had been cluttered with people who operated on Lauren's frequency of superficiality and conditional loyalty. It was time to clear the static. Sarah, Lauren's chief enabler and the reported matchmaker of her sordid affair, was the first to go. I blocked her number, her social media, her very existence from my digital life. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no final parting words. Just a silent, clean excision. The rest of their so-called friend group, the ones who had laughed at the Honda Civic toast and had undoubtedly listened to Lauren's one-sided accounts for months, followed suit. My contact list shrank, but for the first time, it felt entirely authentic. Lauren, however, was not one to be excised quietly. She appeared on my doorstep a few days later, unannounced, dressed to kill. It was a calculated display of defiant beauty, impeccable makeup, a dress that cost more than my monthly car payment, and a confident posture that screamed I'm winning. "Liam," she purred as I opened the door, her voice a syrupy concoction of feigned warmth. "We need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed, a silent sentinel guarding my newfound peace. "No, we don't." Her practiced smile faltered for a microsecond. "Don't be like that. We shared years together. You can't just erase everything." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You erased it, Lauren. You took a match to it the second you decided your boredom was more important than your vows. So forgive me if I'm not feeling nostalgic." "I made a mistake," she insisted, the sweetness in her voice hardening into a sharp, brittle edge. "But that doesn't mean we can't fix this." "Fix this," I repeated, the word tasting like absurdity. "You didn't come here to fix anything. You came here because your plan backfired. Matt turned out to be the same shallow user you are, didn't he? Your great escape turned out to be just another cage, and now you're trying to crawl back to the reliable, boring one you left behind." Her face contorted, the beautiful mask slipping to reveal the ugly fury beneath. "You think you know everything, don't you?" she spat. "You're nothing special, Liam. You're a placeholder. The kind of man a woman settles for, not the one she dreams about." Her words were poisoned darts, honed over years of practice, designed for maximum impact. But they clattered uselessly against the armor I had built. I smiled, a genuine, unforced smile. "You're right," I said, and the admission seemed to stun her into silence. I am boring. I pay my taxes. I find satisfaction in a job well done. I don't require constant validation or manufactured drama to feel alive. And you know what else I am? I'm free. Free of you, free of your games, free of the exhausting, soul-crushing performance of being your husband. Her mouth hung open, a comeback dying on her lips. For the first time since I'd known her, Lauren was speechless. You can go now, I said, my voice calm. We're done here. She stood frozen for a moment, her mind visibly scrambling for a new strategy, a new angle of attack, and finding none. Then, her composure shattered completely. You'll regret this, she hissed, her voice venomous. You'll be miserable and alone in your boring little life, and you'll miss me. I didn't even flinch. I doubt it, I said, and I closed the door in her face. The silence that filled the house in that moment was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It wasn't empty, it was clean. It was the sound of a new beginning. That night, I called Ryan. Guess who paid me a visit? Let me guess, Ryan said. The ghost of marriages past. She tried the we can work it out angle, then defaulted to calling me a boring placeholder. Ryan snorted. Classic Lauren. Always classy. How are you holding up? Honestly, I said, looking around my quiet, uncluttered living room. I've never been better. The divorce was finalized with the unceremonious signing of papers. Lauren, faced with irrefutable evidence of her financial and emotional betrayals, had been forced to accept a settlement that was a far cry from the 50-50 split she'd assumed was her right. The house was officially mine. The chaos had ended. In its wake, I was left with a strange and unfamiliar quiet. For the first week, it felt unnerving, the absence of Lauren's constant energy leaving a vacuum. But slowly, I began to fill that vacuum not with noise, but with myself. The first order of business was an exorcism. I went through the house room by room, purging every last artifact of her existence. The pretentious art prints, the ridiculously expensive vase that held only dust, the mountain of throw pillows that served no functional purpose. I boxed it all up, drove it to a donation center, and felt a profound sense of liberation as I watched them take it away. Ryan arrived the following weekend, armed with a six-pack and a power drill, declaring it a Dullorinification project. He walked into the living room, surveyed the Spartan space, and nodded with approval. It's a blank canvas, man. Let's make this place yours. We spent the weekend painting walls a deep, calming gray, assembling a comfortable leather recliner, and mounting a ridiculously large television. We even put up a dartboard. By Sunday evening, the house was unrecognizable. It was no longer a stage for a marriage. It was a sanctuary. My sanctuary. That night, watching a game with Ryan, a sense of peace settled over me that I hadn't felt in years. So, what's next for Liam Hayes, the free man? Ryan asked during a commercial break. Honestly, I have no idea, I admitted. For now, this is enough. You should take a trip, he said, his expression serious. Go somewhere you've always wanted to go. Don't think, just book it. Get some distance. The idea took root. A week later, I booked a flight to a small, rugged coastal town in the Pacific Northwest, a place of misty mornings and dramatic, rocky shores. I spent 10 days there. I hiked through ancient forests, the scent of pine and damp earth filling my lungs. I sat in quiet coffee shops for hours, reading books I'd meant to read for years. I spent evenings watching the powerful, relentless crash of the ocean against the shore, feeling my own inner turmoil slowly being smoothed away by its rhythm. I didn't have a single profound epiphany. There was no movie montage moment of transformation. It was quieter than that. It was the slow, steady realization that my identity was not contingent on someone else's validation. My worth wasn't determined by whether someone found me exciting. I was enough, just as I was. Boring, reliable, and finally, completely at peace. When I returned, the house felt like home for the first time. I fell into a new, healthier rhythm. Work, gym, quiet evenings. I started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends, a simple, rewarding act that connected me to something genuine and uncomplicated. I wasn't actively looking for anything or anyone. I was simply living. Months later, I heard through the grapevine that Lauren and Matt had spectacularly flamed out, a predictable implosion of two deeply selfish people. She had moved to another city, chasing some new, undefined dream. I felt a flicker of something, not sadness, not satisfaction, just a distant, detached acknowledgement that a chapter was truly, finally closed. One Saturday at the shelter, a new volunteer named Clara was trying to wrangle a particularly stubborn basset hound. She was laughing, a genuine, unforced sound, as the dog stubbornly refused to move. I offered to help, and we spent the next hour talking, not about our pasts or our ambitions, but about the absurdly comical nature of dogs. It was easy. It was normal. We started getting coffee after our shifts. She was a landscape architect, a woman who spent her days creating beauty and order from dirt and chaos. She was kind, funny, and had a quiet confidence that was the antithesis of Lauren's loud, demanding presence. One evening, sitting on a park bench, she looked at me. "You seem like you've been through something," she said, not as an accusation, but as a gentle observation. "You have this calm, like the air after a big storm." I smiled, looking out at the setting sun. "It was a hurricane," I said, "but the storm passed." She simply nodded, accepting my answer, and we sat in comfortable silence. In that moment, I realized the ultimate revenge wasn't in Lauren's downfall or my own triumph. It was in this quiet, simple, authentic moment. Lauren had called me a Honda Civic, meant as an insult, but she was wrong. A Civic is reliable. It's unpretentious. It doesn't need to be flashy to be valuable. It just keeps going, quietly and dependably, getting you exactly where you need to be. And for the first time, I was exactly where I wanted to be.